Manifesto for the benefit of Miss Linda Shapiro. Dear Miss Shapiro, while seeking an appropriate title for this soliloquy, I mulled over several options, but finally settled on one which I regard as most direct and heartfelt: common decency or lack thereof. Je m'explique. Allow me to explain. First, my belated thanks for the Goton blowout at Tony Di Napoli's restaurant some months ago. I liked the shrimp scampi, washed down with a fine Chianti. What I did not like was your motive for arranging our get-together, which was self-congratulatory in nature, supposedly presenting me with the opportunity of thanking you for adopting my son and providing him with the finer things in life, including a solid formal education. After you got up to give your petit discours, your little speech, it was apparently the juncture for Alexander Harrison to convey hosannas, express my gratefulness for the magnitude of your altruism, your dedication to his well-being. Nothing could have been further from my mind. I disapproved of the adoption and your reasons for doing so from the outset, based on what the pediatrician who cared for Linda confided to me. He knew of a wealthy white woman who sought to adopt a child with blonde hair and blue eyes, a wasp. He made that quite clear to me. Thus, it was not just any infant whom you sought to appropriate, but one who met your specifications. Based on hearsay, des on-dit, you were willing to compensate generously both the MD and the expected mother. Give her hush money to discourage her from changing her mind within the allotted grace period, just in case she reconsidered and wanted her progeny back. It was a non-disclosure agreement, good for life. The mother, of course, was Linda Davies. Her adopted son, whom you named Jack, informed me that you merely took care of the medical expenses, the prenatal care, and the birth, but I am skeptical. Linda Davies may have a weak character, may have lacked the resolve that other women would have shown who, under similar circumstances, would have held on to their child, no matter what. But Miss Davies is no fool when it comes to the pursuit of, to use a Dickensian turn of phrase, the almighty dollar, or the almighty buck. Welsh are known for that, and Linda's lineage is Welsh. I'm reminded of the nursery rhyme. Taffy was a Welshman. Taffy was a thief. Taffy came to my house and stole a round of beef. I went to Taffy's house, and Taffy was in bed. So I picked up a jerry pot and hit him in the head. Many a truth is said in jest, Ms. Shapiro. This settlement which Linda Davies reached with you had to be lifelong, because when I queried her, about 8 decades later, asked her to sign a simple statement confirming I was Jack's father, as she had been claiming all those years, Linda all of a sudden became evasive and advised me to be more spiritual. It was then that I realized that the fix was in. Either I was Jack's parent, or Linda had been putting me on, pulling my leg for decades. As it later turned out, when I perused the adoption papers, the same ones that you allegedly had sealed for life, my name was not even mentioned. If Jack was and is my kith and kin, as mentioned previously, I never signed or was asked to sign any paper surrendering him to the Shapiros. Jack knew this. Linda Davies knew this. The Shapiros were aware of it, but Alexander Harrison was never informed. One look at photos of both of us, juxtaposed, leaves no doubt regarding my paternity. A friend to whom I showed photos of me and Jack together summed it up best: "Vous vous ressemblez comme deux gouttes d'eau." We resemble each other like 2 drops of water. Lamely, Jack informed me that I was fortunate to be considered his birth father. But I dismiss such PC hot air as psychobabble. One thing that they drum into you in the social sciences is never to use clear-cut language if you can avoid it. Imagine for a moment that a middle-class black family living modestly in a housing project approached that same pediatrician, personne interposée, between you and Linda Davies, and asked to adopt our son. How seriously would they have been taken compared to the Norman Shapiros, who owned a kosher wine business, a restaurant on the Lower East Side, and possessed other assets? Old Provençal saying comes to mind. Provençal is a dialect of modern French. L'argent n'a pas de queue, et giraud, évidemment. Money has no tail. It slides easily. My conviction is that you, Miss Shapiro, were the driving force behind the adoption. Your husband, saddled with financial woes, could not have cared less. I understand that at one point, Jack and his young family were almost left homeless because of Norman Shapiro's shenanigans. May he rest in peace, safely tucked away in Mount Hebron Cemetery, where he is interred with other adherents of the Orthodox faith. I've spoken with former acquaintances of your late husband, who lived in the same apartment building where he resided in Crown Heights at 789 St. Mark's Avenue between New York and Brooklyn Avenues, and all agreed Shapiro Père was a good bloke, a good fellow, couldn't help liking him, who bragged that his kosher wine was so thick you could cut it with a knife. It was an enterprising former state investigator who helped me to have Jack's records unsealed. And he was also involved, as a matter of fact, his name is Vincent Parco, in the Fatal Attraction homicide case involving a certain Carolyn Warmus. But I conducted most of the other research myself. But thanks to Parco, we took pictures of Jack unbeknownst to him when I first found him working at Mo Ginsburg's clothing store in 1987. But I digress. Feeling abandoned early in 1966 and on the verge of giving birth, what Linda Davies needed was not for a wealthy white family to take away her newborn, whom she had carried in her womb for 9 months under trying circumstances, but counseling, the intervention of a disinterested, compassionate third party, who would explain to her the lifelong consequences of giving up her child, of the incorrigible sorrow that would ensue. A beau geste that you could have made would have been to rescind that bid for adoption, request counseling for Miss Davies, and chosen another child who was truly needy. Linda came from an upper-class background, family in Rugby. Her father, Tom Davies, was a successful entrepreneur who owned an engineering firm, Willow Engineering on Willow Road, and her friends included county folks in the town like Philip Snow, Verser, for whom she worked at Rugby School, world-class cricket player, and his brother C.P. Snow, renowned novelist, inter alios, all of whom would have pitched in to help if she had kept the child and returned home to raise him. Hard up, nécessiteuse, in need of someone like you, Miss Shapiro, to rescue Jack? I don't believe so. Counseling was necessary, not a rescue. I believe that you took advantage of Linda Davies' confusion and demoralized state of mind to take her child away, not for altruistic reasons, but for egotistical ones. Otherwise, you would not have been so explicit in your questions to the doctor regarding the child's physical traits. Ironic, isn't it, that no one emerges from this fiasco, neither Jack, who resents having been adopted, nor Linda Davies, whose life is adrift, nor Alexander Harrison, who did not act au bon moment. Réfléchissez. He could have done the right thing, like Madonna years later, who adopted African children who truly were nécessiteux. Say what you will about Madonna, her talent as an entertainer or lack thereof, her heart is in the right place. But it was not enough to adopt a WASP child, but what the mother needed was counseling before committing the irremediable and giving up her infant. You insisted, contrary to Judaic tradition, on proselytizing, on converting him to your religion and your way of life. The result is that whereas both his parents were born into the Christian faith, and his ethnic roots lie in Wales and Old Blighty, he has no respect for either of us or our respective families. Jack must be the only Welshman in the world with a surname like Shapiro. His disdain for his roots became clear when I sent him photos of my kith and kin, of my parents, thus his grandparents, of an uncle who fought in the Great War as an NCO to help keep the empire together, and Beau Ideal, which my whole family believed in, and my late sister, thus his aunt, whose pictures I sent him. Jack could not have cared less. To Jack, Linda and I are de trop, philosophical term employed by Jean-Paul Sartre to mean redundant, superfluous, expendable. Although I was abroad traveling in Rhodesia in February 1966, when Linda delivered Jack, I returned in March with a wild, extravagant hope that we could regain custody, since it was well within the grace period. Then, tout à fait comme par hasard, or perhaps it was not entirely by chance, Linda met Robert Ostrov, M.D., and she never spoke to me again of her expectation of regaining our son. Was Robert Ostrov sent to convince Linda to give up the idea of regaining Jack? I always believed that his presence was a distraction, a red herring, introduced to her to take her mind off what should have been her focus. A young mother with a beautiful son who could hold her head high, but some things were apparently not to be. Have a hunch that Linda has drifted aimlessly in life since that pivotal moment early in 1966 when she gave up Jack. Premonition that marriage was a bad one. Ostrov never encouraged Linda to pursue a college degree, yet that was the ostensible reason that Miss Davies had immigrated to the U.S. to take advantage of opportunities here unavailable to women back home. All of this is water under the bridge now, et on ne peut pas faire marche arrière. Nonetheless, the past is a predator, and the loss of her firstborn, when it really counted, is a wound that will never heal. Linda Davies has been reunited with Jack as an adult, but it is not the same thing as if she had raised him herself and seen him at the moment of his birth. I am looking at a photo of Linda surrounded by her new family, a snapshot which haunts me to this day. Everybody in the picture is smiling but her. Linda stares straight into the camera. But it is a vacant, faraway look, and her mind appears to be elsewhere. One senses in the eyes a hint of incorrigible tristesse, as if she were thinking back to that day in 1966, when I should have been at the hospital with her to celebrate the birth of her son, but was elsewhere, traveling in what remained of Cecil Rose's Cape to Cairo dream. Britain's last stronghold in a once vast colonial empire, which at its apogee covered almost half of Africa, southern Rhodesia. Miss Davies, what can I say after I've said I'm sorry?